Welcome back to Red Recapped. Today I'm going to describe an action thriller movie called Out of the Furnace, released in 2013. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie starts with Harlan who's watching a film in his car at a park with a female friend. When she laughs at him, he becomes angry and slams her face into the car's dashboard. This catches the attention of another man in the park, who intervenes, leading to a fight between him and Harlan. In a different part of the story, a man named Russell Bays works at a steel mill in Pennsylvania. He sees the car of his younger brother, Rodney, parked by the racetrack on his way home from work. Russell approaches Rodney, who has lost money on horse racing. Russell questions where Rodney got the money to bet and learns that he borrowed it from a loan shark named John Petty, who's involved in illegal activities. Despite being frustrated with his brother's behavior, Russell cares deeply for him and can't bring himself to scold him. He visits his sick father, taken care of by his uncle Red Bays, and discovers that Rodney, a military member, will soon be sent to Iraq. Russell later goes to meet John, the moneylender, but encounters Harlan in John's room. Russell gives John his monthly salary to pay off Rodney's debt and asks him to keep it a secret from Rodney. He spends time at John's bar before heading home, drunk. That night, Russell drives home under the influence, and the streets are deserted. Suddenly, a car appeared ahead and stopped sideways on the road. Russell couldn't brake in time and ended up hitting the car, which held a mother and her young child. Tragically, the accident resulted in their deaths. Russell was devastated, and he received an 8-year prison sentence as a result. While in prison, Rodney regularly visited his brother, but Russell's girlfriend, Lena Taylor, never came to see him. Rodney shared that he was heading to Iraq and might be away for a while. After years passed, Rodney returned following his military service. During this visit, he sadly informed Russell that their father, who had been sick for a long time, had passed away. Russell was deeply saddened by the news, as Rodney was now his only family. Eventually, Russell was released from prison, and Rodney picked him up on his release day. Russell's first stop was the graves of his parents, and then he sought out Lena. He discovered that Lena had a new boyfriend, Wesley Barnes, who was a police chief. Russell could only watch them from a distance. The story shifts to the brothers' lives after Russell's challenging times. Russell resumed his old job at a steel mill in Pennsylvania, while Rodney became involved in illegal fighting to pay off his debts to John. Rodney struggled in the fights, often falling and taking hard hits. However, his determination grew when his opponent insulted his mother. Rodney channeled his anger into energy and managed to win the fight, ultimately paying off his debts. Upon seeing Rodney win the fight, John was actually annoyed because he had bet on Rodney losing, resulting in his own loss. John suggested that Rodney might not be suitable as a fighter since he struggles to control his emotions. He recommended that Rodney consider working at a metal factory like his brother. Despite his battered face and feeling a bit dizzy, Rodney didn't pay heed to John's advice. Meanwhile, Russell, who had been waiting for Rodney to return home, was surprised by Rodney's condition. Even though he saw Rodney's injuries, Russell didn't ask about what happened. Rodney went straight to his room and seemed hesitant to talk. The next day, while cleaning up after breakfast, Russell noticed bandages from Rodney's hands in the trash. He immediately talked to Rodney and advised him to quit being a fighter. Russell suggested that Rodney join him to work at a metal factory. Although the pay might not be as good as being a fighter, it could provide a stable living. Upon hearing this, Rodney got angry and claimed he no longer cared about life. He revealed scars from his time serving in Iraq, explaining that witnessing the horrors of war had led to depression. He felt that his service didn't lead to a better life. Later in the day, Rodney went to John's bar and implored him to help register him for a fight to pay off his debts. Initially, John hesitated because of the high risks and the shady reputation of the fight's organizers. However, Rodney's persistent requests eventually convinced John to give in and fulfill Rodney's wish. Later, John contacts Harlan, the person responsible for arranging the fights, to include Rodney in the upcoming illegal match. In another place, Russell meets with Lena, pleading for a chance to be together again. However, Lena turns down his request, especially since she's pregnant due to her relationship with Wesley. Despite their tears, they hug as Russell tries to let Lena go. After meeting Lena, Russell goes to the site of a car crash he was involved in. He places a wreath there to pay respects to the accident victims. The next day, he joins his uncle Red for a hunting trip in the forest, following his uncle's invitation despite feeling weary. Meanwhile, Rodney is with John to meet Harlan. Harlan underestimates Rodney's fighting ability due to his appearance, not considering him a typical fighter. Hearing Harlan's taunts, Rodney becomes angry and challenges him to prove his capability for the illegal fight. Thankfully, John manages to mediate and resolve the tension. Later, John takes Rodney aside and talks to him. He requests Rodney to give up in the next fight, as it aligns with the agreement between him and Harlan. Rodney remains silent, holding on to his anger towards Harlan. He hadn't yet made up his mind about giving in. Shortly after, the fight began. Rodney's intense fury fueled his attacks, allowing him to effectively overpower his opponent. Observing this, John firmly warned Rodney to surrender. Following John's advice, Rodney complied. He stopped fighting back and absorbed the attacks, not retaliating. Unfortunately, his opponent continued to beat him, prompting John to step into the arena to rescue Rodney. After the match, Harlan approached John and stated that his purpose was fulfilled. Harlan had won the bet money due to Rodney's fight. Later, as they headed home, John felt relieved that he wouldn't have to deal with Harlan anymore. However, his relief turned out to be misplaced when Harlan and his men intercepted their car. Harlan approached John's car, which had come to a halt at the end of a bridge. Upon seeing Harlan, John's cell phone accidentally slipped under the car seat, dialing his bartender's number and connecting to voicemail. Through the car window, Harlan got close to John's face and declared that he wasn't finished. He then shot John dead. Harlan instructed his men to grab Rodney and take him to a warehouse. That same night, Russell returned from his hunting trip and entered Rodney's room, finding a letter. In the letter, Rodney apologized to Russell for not heeding his advice to avoid fighting. He vowed that the ongoing fight would be his last, and afterward, he planned to work in a metal factory. Meanwhile, Rodney was enduring torture at the hands of Harlan's men. As Harlan entered the barn, he demanded to see Rodney's face. However, Rodney responded by taunting Harlan, labeling him a coward. This provocation infuriated Harlan, leading him to immediately shoot Rodney. After Rodney's death, Harlan instructed his men to bury his body in the forest. The following day, Wesley visited Russell's house. Initially, Russell believed Wesley's visit might be about his past relationship with Lena. However, Russell's assumption was incorrect. Wesley had come to inform Russell about John's death in the forest. Later, at the police station, a voice recording from moments before John's death was played for Russell. It turned out that the last seconds of sound before John died had accidentally been recorded in his bartender's voicemail. However, the police were facing difficulty in locating Rodney, who was with John when he died. Despite interrogating those present at the fight scene, no one was willing to speak up. Learning this, Russell became deeply upset. He even accused Wesley and the police of incompetently handling Rodney's disappearance case. Some time later, Russell and his uncle visited John's office in search of information about Harlan's address. The bartender at John's office didn't know Harlan's address but could provide details about the fight's location. In the course of his investigation, Russell uncovered the fact that John owed a substantial debt to Harlan, which would be cleared through a fight agreement. Upon learning this, Russell and his uncle hurried to the fight's supposed location. Regrettably, they found no one there. Later that night, Russell, initially hesitant, they eventually took him to Harlan's headquarters, suspecting he might be an undercover cop. However, due to the crowd present, Russell couldn't identify Harlan. His attempt didn't yield any results. While driving with his uncle, Russell was pulled over by a local police officer. The police officer was instructed by Wesley to tell Harlan to leave the area immediately. The officer also warned that these individuals tend to handle things themselves and are unfriendly to outsiders. The cop accompanied Russell and his uncle to ensure they left the area. Disobeying would result in arrest. Reluctantly, Russell and his uncle followed the police's instructions and headed back home. A few days later, Wesley waited for Russell at the factory exit after work. He informed Russell that the police had found Rodney's body buried in the woods. Upon hearing the news, Russell tried to stay composed. That evening, Wesley and Lena visited Russell's home to offer their condolences. Lena advised Russell not to investigate Rodney's death alone and to leave the case to the police. Several months went by, and Russell attempted to lead a normal life. Despite hearing about a police raid on Harlan's house, Harlan's location remained unknown. After waiting fruitlessly for months, Russell eventually decided to take matters into his own hands. He secretly entered John's office to gather information about Harlan. He discovered Harlan's phone number and immediately dialed it. Russell requested that Harlan come to the bar where John's office was located, promising to settle John's outstanding debts. That night, Harlan arrived at the bar accompanied by one of his associates. He carried a large bag and entered through the back entrance. Russell, who had been lurking nearby, approached the bar's entrance armed with a gun. Inside, he threatened and interrogated the bartender, pressuring them to provide information about the person who had called Harlan. The uninformed bartender was shot by Harlan. Russell managed to incapacitate Harlan's men in another room and readied himself to shoot Harlan. However, Harlan's shot was forceful, prompting Russell to take cover. When Harlan escaped, he found his car sabotaged and had to flee on foot, seeking refuge in an abandoned factory. Russell pursued him, resulting in a fight. Russell successfully shot Harlan in the leg, though Harlan remained standing. Russell then instructed Harlan to move into the forest. Wesley arrived at the scene and urged Russell to stop, but Russell ignored the warning. As Harlan walked away, Russell shot him in the back, ending his life. In the film's conclusion, Russell was back at his house. Despite killing Harlan, he avoided imprisonment because Wesley vouched for him and managed to secure Russell's acquittal. That's all from the video. Thanks for watching, and take care.